Breakfast good day, every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Good evening and welcome to Hot News, your most authoritative evening political show in the country. We are coming to you from our studios in Abelemkpe 48 Swanika Street here in Accra. Let me remind you that we are streaming live on Facebook at Pan-African Television. We are live on YouTube at Pan-African Television. You can connect with us via our WhatsApp/text line on 0260846539, 0260846539. You can as well leave your messages, comments, suggestions, and whatnot on our social media pages. We'll make a time and read all those out for you. My name is Justice Appiah, and tonight we are asking a very big question, a very basic but big question. There is a growing concern of insecurity in the country. Currently, I believe that you have heard, the killing of the Member of Parliament for Infanteman constituency. Not too long ago, one law professor at the University of Ghana has been murdered in his house. The journalist who worked with Appiah was also killed some time past. Absolutely nothing we've heard about that issue as it stands now. A host of others, including the PR for Temaport and Harbour Authority, was also killed. Same way, Fennec Ochre, murdered. Member of Parliament for Ebuakwa North constituency, Honorable J.P. Dankwa Edume, so rest in perfect peace, was murdered in his home. And so many people, I cannot, stop. The Assemblies of God, Pastor Atema, who was equally murdered. Until today, or up to today, absolutely nothing has been done about the situation. We've not heard anything. But in this regard, President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo spoke and asked the IGP to make sure that the perpetrators of these heinous crimes are brought to book, especially the one that was perpetrated recently at the Infanteman constituency, or what will happen. He has threatened to fire the IGP if he's unable to bring the perpetrators to book. But there's a very big question. Who bears the brunt of all these things happening? Who bears the brunt of all these things happening? Do we have a porous security system? Our security lapses, what is preventing us from fixing all those lapses when it comes to security in this country? What are the issues? What is so wrong with our security system that when crimes of this nature are perpetrated or are committed, we are unable to bring the persons who committed those crimes to book immediately? All these cases I have mentioned, up to today, we have not been able to conclude even a single one of them. Why? The big issue this evening is that members of parliament are demanding for personal bodyguards. They are demanding for personal bodyguards because they think that 2 of their members were murdered. And so they are afraid. They are living in fear. The need for government to provide some sort of security for them. This evening, the news that we are gathering is that they are going to be given personal bodyguards. Already we have security lapses in the country. The security, ratio in itself is not one that is very encouraging when it comes to Ghana. Yet we are going to be giving personal bodyguards from our security services to members of parliament of this country. And the question I've been asking is that, are they more Ghanaian or humans than the other ordinary Ghanaians out there? Why would a member of parliament be provided with a personal security? Do they know the number of persons who are murdered every day amongst the ordinary Ghanaian out there? And so should we also demand for personal security in this country? Those are the questions we are asking. What problem would government solve, or has government solved, by providing personal security to members of parliament in this country, if the issue in itself is is about how porous our security architecture is, then we should be looking at how to resolve that problem than to have been, giving, security personnel or bodyguards to members of parliament, which wouldn't solve any problem or whatsoever. How would that solve the problem of growing concern of insecurity in this country? Basically, that is what we are going to be looking at on the show. Keep your messages coming in on 0260846539, 0260846539. But I've been joined in the studio by Mr. Sule Ibrahim. He is a security analyst who will be helping us digest these issues properly. We'll also be crossing over to the phone lines and speak to other security experts and take their views on this particular matter. But let me briefly come to the studio. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for coming. It's been a long time.
And thank you for having me, and good evening to your viewers as well.
All right. Now let's move to business.
Yes.
Let's look at what we are talking about tonight.
Yes.
Security lapses in the country.
Yeah.
And I asked a simple question: who bears the brunt? But what do you make of the current growing concerns of insecurity in the country?
Yeah. Thank you. And generally, if you gauge the mood of the public, what you get the sense is, it's not just the events, the cases of insecurities or armed robbery, murdering, and all those kind of things going on. The cases have been reported day in, day out. So the trend is there's increment in the trend on daily basis. And aside that, there is genuine heightened sense of fear and insecurity in the public, and that's very much worried, because if the public becomes so much panic, worried, and more fearful of each other or going out, it causes a lot of problem, not just for security officials, but even for policymakers. And it's also creates opportunity for criminal elements who want to use that opportunity to stage more of their activities in the system. Because if you're going out, you are not sure of the situation on the ground, and you are not sure you get your destination, you will come back to your house, you're in your house, you don't know what is really going on. And the problem in all this situation is the public, there's a cry, people are crying. At least there should be some kind of assurance from the state level and speak to the public to calm people's nerves down, to let people know that, okay, the state is aware of the situation. There are measures have been put in place to more like re-engineer our security architecture to get people know that yes, there's genuine awareness of what is going on, there's concern for it, and people are going to act, and people are actually acting. That is where the problem is, because the cry is there, the incidents are there, but then the assurance that we will get out of it, and this is how we are going to get out of it. That is where the problem is at the moment, from my perspective, your analysis of the issues on the ground.
Okay, but you see, for me, and it's not about my opinion, but what do you make of the security architecture we have as a country? I mentioned a lot of murder cases, and up to now we don't know the head and tail of such cases and all of that. No persons have been brought to book. I stand to be corrected and all of that. It takes a lot of time to be able to even apprehend persons who might have been one way or the other perpetrated such crimes. In other countries, it takes less than 24 hours for persons who are engaged in such activities to be apprehended. Why is it that in our case, it's this way?
It's a very good question, and if you sit down, you do the analysis, and you go further, you ask yourself, the concept of modern nation state is such that we, the civilians, we cannot bear arms. We have surrendered our right to bear arms to the state. So if we are confronted with challenges of this nature, then we call on to the state, or we go to the state to find out what is really going on, because we have surrendered our right to it. So now it's left with the state acting. If the state were to be acting in the way it's supposed to be acting, then you will not have this kind of increased cases and heightened sense of insecurity in the system. So we pose questions to the state. And then if you go to a state architecture and you look at the way our security is designed, it leaves a lot to be worried, because if you have the police more or less, it's a watchdog on the people on behalf of the government of the day. So if the police are failing, then the questions should not only be thrown to the police, it should be also thrown to the state or those in charge of the state of the day, let's say the government of the day. Because the police are not doing their work as supposed to be seen or is expected of the public. Then we pose questions to them. You go further to the state and ask, well, okay, what is going on? If the police are not doing their work well, you are the ones supervising them. You have the oversight responsibility over the police, and the things are not going down within our internal security. So what is going on? That's a very good question to ask, and we ask and we have not found it. But if you do the analysis and you look at it, and you look at the nature of the crimes that are ongoing on, then you look at the impunity with which some of the crimes are committed, the way they are so sophisticated, and the way they can engage police in a gun battle, it leaves a lot to be worried. You ask yourself, are these guys really common armed robbers who are out there to just make a living, or they've acquired some kind of specialized skills that is available to state security and they're using it to terrorize people and evading security? Because it's difficult to say for a crime to be going on at this particular distance, and then for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and then there is a nearest police station or there's a nearest checkpoint, and the people, the robbers are able to have that audacity to commit. It raises a lot of questions, and if you look at those questions, comes back to the way we recruit people into the police system, internal security, and that's a fundamental, a lot of problem. We have a lot of problem there, and then you look at recent cases where the police have to shoot some people out of their system because of their behavior. So the questions come back: how are people recruited into the police? And those people that we throw out of the system, where did they go with the skills that they've acquired, and what did they use it for? If they themselves are not even engaging the armed robbery, is there a possibility that they use the skills that they've acquired from the state to share with armed robbers who will go out and evade state security? That's a challenge we need to find out, and I think the police also need to find out, or need to help us in getting answers to that. And another point that we would also need from the police is when you throw out people from the system, let the public know how they came in. Because if you know that these people, if it's consistently that those who get into trouble in the system are those who come in not necessarily through the normal procedure, but through influencers, then we begin to have a problem. And if we have a state security or a security architecture in such a way that we have a lot of vigilante boys who can have access to all those employment or recruitment into the police, the immigration, all that. The question that you ask yourself, those people, do they start in the first place looking for work in the police? They started party boys. Their interest was not security, but jobs. So they go in there, get the job. What they're in there is for the money. So people are not trained. They don't have that passion. They get in there. How would they act sufficiently to deal with matters that have concern to the public? And if some of the matters concern their own partisan interests, would they act swiftly? So fundamentally, there's a problem with the way our state, the security is structured, and the way we manage it. And then for the fact that if you take national security, the president of the day have the right and the liberty to determine the size and the composition. Because that's the structure of the national security. So it becomes like a regime security. So you come in, establish your regime security, and then works with you. When you leave power, that one is destroyed, the next one comes. So there is no that institutional memory that will guide us to build our institutional laws and those who work within those laws, because everybody has his own philosophy and his way of thinking about security in the country, and that's a problem. And we take the police too. We have the police council. We have about 10 members in the police council. 8 of them are virtual political appointees, so 80%. The rest is just maybe from the police, 2 people from the police or whatever, they are in the 8 of them are virtually political appointees. How would partisan interests not infiltrate into the police? Would the police able to sit down and take a operation decision that will affect a party or somebody who is affiliated to a political party that is of interest to make more or less the regime of the day or somebody in government of the day, that they will sit down and watch for the police to act? So a whole lot of problem. We need to sit down and look at the state security architecture. Do we still need to go by that formula that 80% of the police council are made up of politicians? Virtually everything in the national security becomes a regime security. Do we still need that structure to go on? And if you don't need it, we need to do something with it, and that's where we have to start from. And if you don't, and the people that we will need them to lead us in this kind of talk and in this kind of concerns that people are raising, taken from the people and to the government, our MPs or representatives in Parliament. But unfortunately, the public is. People are crying. The public, they have gone ahead to ask for security for themselves. It's been the announcement we got that it's been given to them. So now we are going to have about 200 police being called from duty or whatever they are, and then take it to the MPs. Already, police to civilian ratio is low. We are supposed to have.
Now I would want our focus to be on police to civilian ratio.
Yes.
Currently.
Yes.
How's the situation? Is this something encouraging?
The report that we have from officials, also government sources, 1 police to 800 people in the country. It's supposed to, the international requirement is supposed to be 1 police officer is to 500 people. So already we have excess of 300 people. So 1 police officer handle 800 more or less people. So
the standardized one is 1 to 500.
But what we have
in our situation, we have 1 to 800.
And even that, we are going to take 1 from that one, 200 of them, and give them to the MPs. So the possibility that we are going to have 160,000 people in the system having difficulties of having access to police is going to increase, because there's no way. You can assure me that from now till December, the police will embark on recruitment, train them, and deploy to fix this gap. Because we are creating a gap. So what are you doing to fix it? Particularly in the situation that we find ourselves. Because if there is heightened sense of insecurity, we are supposed to increase visibility of police in the system. But we are rather taking them from the system and giving them to MPs. So what are we doing for ourselves? So it's a whole lot of... need to sit down and rethink more like the philosophy of how we think the state security should look like as we go forward. We have practiced this for almost 30 years in our return to democracy. So consistently things are not working well. At a certain point, there should be a break to sit down and reflect. We need to do something with respect to
now apart from the political infiltration in our security services.
Yes.
And then the police civilian ratio.
Yes.
That currently stands at 1 is to 800.
Yes.
Where the standardized one is supposed to be 1 to 500.
Yes.
Let's look at retooling of our police.
Yes.
I mentioned earlier that somewhere else, if it happens, when crimes of this nature are perpetrated, at most 48 hours, people are arrested and put before court. In our situation, it is entirely different. I can mention more than 20 to 30 cases where nobody has been prosecuted. I doubt if the true perpetrators have been arrested and all of that. Are our security services well equipped enough to handle issues of this nature?
It's quite unfortunate for me to say I cannot sit down and point to Manchester or say that I believe they are well equipped enough to do their work. Because if you take the event that happened in Kumasi in 2019, the kidnapping, we had similar things that were going in Takoradi, and we saw the way the police were handling it. And we saw the Kumasi case when the Canadian or the foreign embassies brought their tools and techniques and specialized skills to aid the police. It didn't take this, and they were able to locate where they were able to rescue the girls.
Yeah.
So it means if our police have the necessary techniques, the up-to-date technology and equipment, and the kind of determination to do their work, they'll be successful. But the problem that I think is up-to-date technology is not available to them, and the fact that the training and the skills updating is also a problem.
If you say up-to-date technology, what do you mean?
Because crime keep increasing. There are the way armed robbery started previously, today, man, it's not going. It's not the same way. So you need to track the trends. You need to read the trends. The events of yesterday are not the same as the events of today. So, and every event or every now and then, new technologies come out to detect. For instance, even a phone call. If they make a phone call at a particular place, you should be able to know where the phone is calling from. So you know where the people are. And if they use a particular tool to commit the crime, if you go and pick the bullet and the spent bullet or the shelf behind, you should be able to know where they got the bullet from. The technology should let you know where they bought that bullet from. And you get to that shop and find out who came to buy this bullet. If you get the gun is registered. Where did they get this gun from? Who bought the gun? All those things they don't have. And you have people, even you can see the way we manage small arms in the country. You're supposed to register every 6 months. You have to come back and renew. How many people go back to renew? And can the police say that they're able to know how many people have DS in the system, and how many people have transferred DS from first party to a second party? So the technology to do how to be updated, they have to have updated one. They have to have skills, consistent training. They have to have a dedicated unit that is more not involved in combat, but sitting down and do this kind of analysis. And that is why we're supposed to have the police, the immigration, and all those prisons and all those things sitting down, joining national security, doing the analysis, collecting the data, doing the analysis, and then helping those in combat, those in operation. But here's the case: the national security, we don't know how data is collected and analyzed, because if data is collected and analyzed in a consistent and systematic manner, at least there will be least as to where the criminals have gone or where they started from. But if you see the cases are going, you don't know, there's nothing whatsoever coming from the police to give the indication that at least there are lists as to where the criminals came from, the tools that they use, where the tools came from, who were involved in buying those tools. You should have every cause to say, I mean, they are not up to date with their technology or their skills or their determination. And that's a fundamental problem. It's not just giving them cars or giving them guns or giving them accommodation, but the tools and the technology to work with is very important in this modern days, because you cannot just fight with guns. You need the technology.
So right now, you see, and it comes back to the question I've asked. Yeah. Because they have been, heightened, should I say, they have been growing concerns of insecurity in this country.
Yes.
Who should we blame?
That's the fundamental problem. Who's in charge of the security? And that's government of the day. You can't take the blame to go and give to civilians. What is going on involves arms, and civilians don't buy arms. We cannot all of a sudden begin to buy arms because there are insecurities. We have surrendered that right to the state, and those in charge of the state is the government of the day. So the government of the day takes responsibility for insecurity, for security, for peace, or for conflict in the country. If there is peace, everything is going on, political stability, there is peace, there is development. Who takes the credit? It's the government of the day. If things are not going on, it's the government of the day that takes the responsibility. And those that are supposed to stand with the civilians to hold the government of the day, to hold the Interior Ministry, to hold the National Security Ministry, to hold the police accountable to this situation, they are the ones that have called for their own protection, and that their protection have been given to them by the Interior Ministry. How would they go back to do?
President has tasked the, I think the IGP,
yes,
to make sure that the perpetrators of the recent one are brought to book.
Yes.
And threatened to fire him if that he's unable to do that.
Yes.
What do you make of that? Is that a good call?
That's a good call because that's a supervision role. The president is supposed to supervise.
I'll come back to you. We have been joined on phone by another security expert and person of Mutaru West. Good evening, my brother.
Hello, good evening to you and good evening, viewers.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are so grateful. Now, what do you make of the current, issues of insecurity in the country?
Sorry, can you come again? I didn't get that.
What do you make of the current, insecurity issues in the country?
Well, it's becoming very, very apparent. The sense of insecurity in our country. If you consider that the last couple of years, we have experienced, an increase in terms of our sense of insecurity relating to, security issues that hitherto were not part of our security landscape. Our crime landscape is changing, and it's changing in a manner that requires significant national attention. And so when we talk about kidnapping has never been part of the security, the crime, profile of this country. And we've seen, this type of crime happening in this space. We're seeing, the killing of a certain member of parliament, and in a manner that is very, very brazen, that is very bold and daring. We saw the killing of Honorable J.B. Dankwa. At the time, we all thought this was a horrendous act of, lawlessness and impunity, and that we needed to ensure that we prevent that from happening again in this space. And yet again, we're having to see the murder of the MP of the Fansiman area. It is defying security profile that has for a long time been considered as a very peaceful and stable place. Now, if you consider the pervasive acts of, violence relating to political agents in the form of, vigilante violence, this collectively has, increased our sense of insecurity in the country. So, generally, we're seeing an increased sense of insecurity in our country, and we need to look at it seriously more than ever.
What do you think has caused the heightened sense of insecurity in the country currently? Well,
if you look at what has happened so far in this space, there's been several factors at play here.
Okay.
If you're looking at the sense of, a system of deterrence in the space, if you have an environment that does not, provide a high level of deterrence for crime, it makes it easy for people to repeat crimes, no matter how horrendous they may appear to be.
Okay.
If you have a system that seems to provide opportunity for some people to engage in lawlessness and violence and go scot-free, it gives license for certain people or others to do that. And when I say this, I'm talking about instances where we have had the opportunity to ask, no, dead. And so the mayor of the Public Relations Affairs Officer of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority in Tema, we never, did what we were supposed to do. The mayor of Ahmed Saleh, we never did what we were supposed to do. We saw, an emboldened group of people who seem to be affiliated with a political party get into a courtroom and forcibly release people who were standing trial for engaging in violence and crime. And yet we did not see the full force of the law applying to them. If you have people, engaging in, especially at the highest level, we saw Honorable Member of Parliament, Honorable Minister Howard Kumsu shooting in the air, at the registration center. That level of impunity, especially of a senior government official, a government representative, in the form of a minister, that is the highest level of impunity we should ever tolerate in this space. And yet, as we speak, we haven't had any public report in the public domain that explains what happened at the time. So this collectively paints an environment that incentivizes, violence and crime in this space. It makes it easy for people to do worse things if we cannot, act in terms of deterrence against things happening.
All right. So, finally, before I let you go, you've mentioned some notable, examples of persons who have been murdered, and absolutely nothing has.
Sorry, can you say that again?
I'm saying
the
that
line is very faint.
Very well. Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm saying that you've mentioned some notable examples of persons who have been murdered without nothing being done about it by the state. Example is Ahmed Swale. We are talking about the PR for Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, who was also murdered sometime past. The University of Ghana, professor who was murdered recently. We're also talking about the Member of Parliament for Abuakwa North, who was equally murdered at the time. Why do you think that the Ghana Police Service or our security services are unable to bring perpetrators of such heinous crimes to book?
Well, there are several factors at play when we talk about the capacity of the Ghana Police Service to do what they are meant to do. Look, there are so many very, very good fine men, gentlemen, capable men in the Ghana Police Service who are capable of doing just so great, comparable to international standards. And we know that for so long, our security services, specifically the Ghana Police Service, have been praised for good work. We will stand very tall in the international space. Yet, when it comes to domestic issues, when things relate to politics or domestic affairs, they seem to be failing us at providing security for us, providing a sense of deterrence for potential crime, and especially investigating murders and bringing full closures to those murders. We haven't seen that happen here. Sometimes it has to do with the political will, the desire and commitment of the political administration at the time to ensure that they provide all the necessary resources and support to bring full closure to such matters. We haven't seen that happen. We haven't seen commitment to bring in full closure. We still have institutional challenges that relate to our investigative capacity, our intellectual and to be able to analyze information and analyze information that is relevant, that can be used successfully prosecutorially. And so all these things are important when we're looking at the success of the police service to bring closures to these things. And we need to look at it from that angle.
Now let's look at some demands from some members of parliament. They are asking that they are giving, bodyguards, personal security personnel. This issue of members of parliament demanding for personal security came up sometime past. It has come up again after one of their own has been murdered recently. This evening, Minister of Interior, I believe, has said that members of parliament are going to be given personal bodyguards and all of that. What do you make of that?
Well, I do not think that this represents, I don't think this is a good call. I don't think it's sustainable, first of all, to provide security services to all 275 members of parliament. I think in simple terms, this is a very, very cheap way of looking at the problems of security in this country. This is a very selfish way of checking out of our common reality as a nation. Look, politicians generally have always sought to check out of our common reality. The challenges that face the general and entire population, they are seeking ways to check out of those problems so they can continue to live and live well at the expense of the state. This is a problem that requires surgery, and yet we're applying bandage solutions to it. When I speak about things like this, talk about, ensuring clinical surgery, it means that we need to look at overall the underpinnings of these problems. What are the factors at play here? If you provide security 275 security personnel for these members of parliament, how many officers are you looking at? 2 officers, 1 day, 1 night, 1 in the office, probably 2 more in the house. How many are you looking at? If you multiply that by, 4 police officers, by the number of parliamentarians, you are looking at well beyond 1,000 police officers. And yet, we know that the Ghana Police Service is woefully inadequate in terms of numbers. We are still well below the United Nations standard in terms of numbers of police, the ratio of police officers to the civilian population. We are still around, just 500. We are looking at, we're supposed to be having 500 police officers. 1 police officer to 500 civilian population. We are well away from that. We are hovering around 800 civilians to 1 population at the moment. And so there is a huge deficit in terms of police numbers for all of us. And once you do this for parliamentarians, further reducing, the number of police officers in the system, there is a huge space and government space all over the country. You only see police visible in some parts, which is generally the urban spaces. The other parts of this country are virtually left ungoverned, and it allows space for private criminals to operate. This does not augur well for all of us. Another point is that this is a very cheap and easy way to check out of this problem we're facing. And politicians and people at the higher levels of our society, economically, and positions of privilege, seem to have that happen in a systematic manner. Look, we have made domestic airlines now more pervasive than before. And if you look, it is a very easy way of leaving the rest of society who cannot afford to continue to struggle, left to die, potentially through road accidents. Because domestic flights are now working, politicians and people who are privileged economically to afford it, it is easy for them, it is convenient for them, it is fast for them. And so it allows them to ignore the general problems that the general society faces, which is ensuring dual carriageways on all the highways, proper and efficient public transportation system for all of us. And yet, once they are able to go around the system through this, well above the ordinary citizen, they ignore the challenges that faces the general population. And so I do not think that providing security for members of parliament is a solution, it's a sustainable solution to this problem.
President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has asked the IGP to bring the perpetrators of this crime to book, else he's going to be fired. Do you think the president has made a good call? Well,
the IGP has a duty to ensure that, security, the nation is stable and peaceful. It has the mandate to ensure that, when things come up like this, he would be seen doing what he's supposed to do. But as a political appointee, it's often a big challenge. An IGP acting fairly, acting firmly, and bringing, cases like this to successful closures. We haven't seen that for a very long time. We haven't seen IGPs acting in a manner that is satisfactory to all of us. And so it's a good call to have an IGP family speak in this manner. Still seeing it. The speaking, the language is correct, but the action is what we're looking at. Will it be complemented with action, or will we get the results we need? Look, as of the moment, We haven't seen any public, serious public statements regarding it. The Minister for Interior should have been, he should have been in Parliament to explain to the nation what is the strategy, what is the plan, what are the circumstances, all these things that happened. A member of Parliament shooting a gun, on the name of defense. A member of Parliament shot, killed on a highway, whether it was, a robbery situation, or, it was a contract killing, or whatever situation. What is it? What are the investigation? What is the investigation telling us? All these things, we need to bring it to national attention. We need to bring light to the matter, and we need to listen and hear from our politicians for confidence in terms of security. Otherwise, when you don't do this, you allow space for people to conjecture, and conjecture can heighten insecurity in the system.
People are of the view that there are a lot of people who have been murdered on the streets. Nobody spoke, not even the president. He did not say anything about some of those things. But when he has to do with a politician, the president quickly issued a statement, talked about the fact that the IGP must at all costs apprehend persons who were behind those heinous crimes. Members of Parliament are...
What has happened so far, like many others have, argued, it tells you what who is relevant in the eyes of, leadership in this country.
Very well.
And so, like you rightly mentioned, many people have died. Many people have been killed. We have had people, more than 20 Kenyan citizens perish in car accidents. And yet, no national statement comes from the president. Sometimes it takes a very long time for the president or any senior public officer to comment on the deaths of significant numbers of people. And yet, here we are. A member of Parliament has passed away, unfortunately. And so, you see politicians projected to national relevance, which is very important. And that is what must be done for everyone else who passes away in circumstances as tragic as this. If you have people perish on a highway, more than 30 people within just 3 months, it tells you that we need to do something serious about it. I swear, you would have seen the latest regarding, how to get around it, how to prevent future occurrence. Yet we did not see that. And so for me, it tells you, the motive of politicians, the interest of politicians, and what they're seeking to do for this country. They're seeking to do for themselves, to protect their interests and not the interests of Ghana or the interests of Ghanaians.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us, my brother. We've been speaking to a security analyst, Mutaru.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
And he's also been sharing his views on the issues of heightened or sense of heightened insecurity in the country currently. As we all know, some murder cases have gone on in the country recently. The most recent one is the one that happened in the Infantiman constituency, and that has to do with the Member of Parliament for Infantiman constituency. Members of Parliament are calling on government to provide them with personal security. Minister of Interior has said today that they are going to be giving personal bodyguards to members of Parliament. But the question is, what about you and I, who are vulnerable and could be murdered at any time by some of these bad nuts in our society? Should we also start demanding for personal security? But that's a very big question that I have posed to each and every one of us. Well, let me come back to Mr. Ibrahim. You have listened to your colleague.
Yes.
What do you make of what he has said?
He spoke absolutely well. That's exactly what's on the ground, and that's exactly what we have all been talking about. And the fact that the president call is a good call, but it's also within his mandate as someone with supervisory role over the police, or somebody as the oversight, because the executive have the oversight role and the parliamentary oversight role over the police. So he was more or less doing his normal duty in respect of that manner. But the point is the action, because we have seen too many times that calls have been made, assurances have been given, but the action have not been fully as supposed to be. So let's wait and see the action, because he didn't give a timeline to the IGP, whether within 2 months or 3 months, 3 days, 4 days, and if you don't get the person within that period, will happen to him, because you say, okay, get the person. If you don't get the person, I will fire you. So when and what time? So if the IGP is there for 2 years, 3 years, and still searching for the person gives the person assurance that I'll bring the person, what will happen? So that's where the problem. It's not about the words and assurances, but the action that follows sometimes betrays the assurances and the words, and that's the problem of this country when it comes to security, more or less in recent time, because people will give you the best of assurance. You want to believe in it, but 2 or 3 days later, everything goes wayward, and it's fundamentally a problem.
Very well. Now let's look at the demands from the members of parliament, where they are asking that they are given personal security, simply because this is the second member of parliament who has been murdered, and they are now living in fear, and so the need for them to be protected. There have been arguments that members of parliament are not more human than any other ordinary Ghanaian in this country. If you're providing security to them, then of course the need for the ordinary Ghanaian to also be protected. What's your argument, or how would you react to that?
From the first point, that's this the more or less most unfortunate thing that members of parliament who are supposed to stand with the civilians and hold the government to provide security for the rest of society have decided to ask the government to give them security, and the government has given. So who is going to speak on behalf of the people? There's no voice anymore. Those who they have taken care of themselves and left us in the woods. So however we come out from the woods, that's over to us, and it's unfortunate. It doesn't show any sign of leadership, sense of justice, or sense of sustainability. This amount of huge number of police are going to be taken from the streets and from the other areas and bring them to the MPs. Those spaces have been left on government. What will happen there? We have vigilantes in the country, spaces that are on government, that's where they train their members. We have secessionist threats in the Volta region. If they find out police are not in this district, why won't they go there and train their members? It's the most unfortunate thing that our MPs could do to us, but that's what they've done. And who do we call on to? That's a fundamentally wrong to just look at the civilian in the face. I think they just took the words of the threats that the robbers left behind. They say, you politicians have made the country difficult to live in, and they think that, oh, then it became a target for all of us, and they securitized it and made it big news for themselves, and the executives, and so you have the executives and then the legislature coming together in unison, and they share the booty among themselves and leave the rest in the bush. That's basically what is going on. So however you come out from the bush, that's over to us. That's basically what they're saying. How are they going to hold the interior minister accountable? An interior minister will come and tell that I have shortage of forces on the ground. That is why there's problem with our security. How are they going to hold him accountable next? Whatever we come out from the woods, over to us.
Well, let me open the phone lines and engage our viewers. So the phone lines are opened. I'm not talking about the WhatsApp line. My director will open the phone lines. Call us and tell us what you think about the current insecurity, issues in the country. But let me take a few of our messages. Well, please don't call the WhatsApp line. I've not asked you to call the WhatsApp line. I'm saying that the phone line is going to be displayed on the screen. Just take that particular number, call us, and then tell us what you think about the current situation in Ghana. This one says, good evening, Justice. Just Ghana today. We are all crying about insecurity, but our biggest insecurity is President Dankwa Akufo-Addo. President Akufo-Addo is our insecurity. He comes on air and say one thing and goes behind to do the exact opposite. He encourages and rewards criminal acts. He's our insecurity, especially we Voltarians. Jejom in Taifa sent in that one. Jejom, thank you so much for your message. This one says, what's going on in this country at all? Well, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. This one says, good evening to you, Justice, and my senior. Most often, the truth sounds uncomfortable in people's ears. If we can be courageous and truthful for once, I may reiterate that as a good people of Ghana, it's uncontested it's an uncontested fact that this government has greatly jeopardized the security architecture of this nation. Infiltration of invisible forces and vigilante groups have become the order of the day. Security professionalism has been relegated to nothingness. Citizens have become prey who some military personnel are combating with hooting impunity. There should be a total security reform after this government, so to comb the hooligans out of the security forces, if not sooner than later, this nation could be highly flammable with hostility. Ahovi Francis from Oyibi sent in that one. Ahovi, thank you. Good evening, Justice. The insecurity in the country is caused by the NPP administration because of the changes they made in the security service. Those who were doing the work properly were removed from their positions, and this is the result we are facing today. Mr. Arafat from Posiga sent in that one. Good evening, Justice. Our MPs are well paid and enjoy a lot of allowances and therefore should be able to get their own personal security. Soldier from Jirapa sent in that one. Soldier, thank you so much for your message. Good evening, Justice. Justice, for the past 4 years. For the past 4 years, all the recruitment into the various security services by government were done in secrecy. There wasn't any notice to the public for qualified citizens to apply for the job. Is that how you govern a country? The likes of Double are in the national security. Citizen in Takrade, please. Sometimes your messages should be short, simple, and concise, so that it will be readable. Please kindly open the phone lines for our viewers to call. A lot of people are calling on the tablet. I'll plead with my director to open the phone lines so that we take some few calls before we wrap up. Please, good evening. This government has failed in the way of security. A member of parliament can't be on a radio station and pointing persons to be killed and come for money. Nothing happened. The system changed such a way that if you are not their party member, they would not bother you. Even if you belong to them, they will start, but no result to the good people of Ghana. I don't understand your message really anyway, but sometimes that's why I'm saying that keep your message simple, short, and concise. This is J. John Chikata watching from Pram Pram. These members of parliament should think about the ways of strengthening general security of Ghana rather than being selfish. When the government provides police protection for them, what happens to us, the ordinary citizens? A very big question that he has asked over there. This one says, Mr. Justice, we can never unravel the killers of those that are behind the killing of these people. How can we use only 6 months to train a police officer with no good academic background to do any good investigations for us? We are joking in this country. We have a caller. Your name and where you're calling from? Kindly lower the volume on your TV set or I take you off. Your name and where you're calling from?
Yeah, I am lecturer calling from the Appiah.
All right, go ahead with your submission, my brother.
Good evening, Justice, and the people who is helping us with the discussion.
Yeah.
In fact, when it comes to the issue of our security currently, there are issues seriously. Currently, everybody is afraid in the country. But when you study the ground, you realize that there are new recruits coming out. Day in, day out. Okay. The question is that what are they passing through before they are now wearing the uniform as policemen? Young men are around with their certificates. They wanted to get this military fire service. But we don't even hear about this recruitment issue that they are coming out. They are passing out, coming in. But my concern is that if today they are giving about 200 policemen to only our parliamentarians who are already having the money. Our money is with them. They are still thinking about themselves. Then what about we, the individuals walking around on the streets? What is going to happen to us? So we are pleading. NPP government itself, I don't know why they want to just pick us for granted. By the way, I believe strongly that by the end of these 2 months, they will edit, they will go out, and we'll get ourselves and come back as a Ghana complete country.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for your submission. If you call, just make it snappy. Our time is almost up. My humble appeal to the MPs is that those police officers that they are going to be assigned to them will soon be their killers. Thank you so much for your message. Al-Hassan Sisi's Zeno Centra, the security services have been politicized by politicians, and this government is not ready to punish hooligans, which they have employed into our security services. Thank you so much for your message. We have a caller. Your name and where you're calling from. Make it very snappy.
I'm calling from North East Region. Now, there you go.
Go ahead with your submission. By your name.
My name is John, calling from North East Region. Now, there you go.
John, go ahead.
Yes, to me, Kennedy Ajapo supposed to be arrested right now, and how a commission is supposed to be arrested? Nothing.
Why should they be arrested?
But because how Kushing publicly used a gun and shoot, no one question her. Kennedy upon make a statement, they kill Ahmed Swadi, nothing. But killing a minister, president come out and say, oh, they should do faster and arrest those people. What about Ahmed Swadi? Nothing. We shall see.
Thank you so much for your submission. I'm very grateful. Good evening, Justice. We are worried and disturbed regarding the recent happenings, but what do we do? The best solution is to vote against this family and friends. An incompetent government. Mr. J in Tamale sent in that one. Mr. J, thank you so much for your message. Hello, Justice. We, the people of Saboba in the northern region, are also calling for justice to be done to Mr. Francis Nyaful Atongo, a staff member of N. Good evening. Your name and where you're calling from. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, good evening.
Your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Adam Mahmoud, calling from Boko in the Upper East Region.
Adam, go ahead with your submission.
Mr. Justice, look at chief in this country.
Yeah.
People are toying with our security. My main concern is that Canada and Japan is look at chief is above the law. He's doing things the way he wants. If you look at country, the judges that have insulted, maligned, what is happening? So I think it's high time Ghanaians should do all that they can to keep this particular government out, or else we are not going to be safe in this country. Look at what is happening. Look at the security sector. Look at what's happening currently. So I think it's high time we should keep them out completely to bring your mama who will save this country, or else I'll set the press. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, thank you so much for your submission. I think that we need to discuss this devoid of politics to make sure that we put these issues in proper perspective. We, the people of Saboba in the northern region, are also calling for justice to be done to Mr. Francis Nyaful Atongo, a staff member of NIA, who was murdered in cold blood in Sanguli on Thursday, 8th October 2020. The police in the area have not made any arrest yet. Samuel in Saboba in the northern region sent in that particular one. This one says murdering can be solved by voting Akufo-Addo out of power because he's too autocratic. This is not politics, please. From Yao. Yao, thank you so much for your message. This one says, the president should know that we are all Ghanaians. God is watching. Vasco in Pusiga sent in that one. This one says, I'm Emmanuel from Wa, providing bodyguard to MPs who bears the cost, the poor Ghanaian taxpayers' money. Thank you so much for your message. That's a very good question also. This one says the MPs are not better than the ordinary people, so they should rather think of how to equip the security with the required data and equipment to safeguard all citizens, but not only some fraction of people. Thank you so much for your messages. I have a lot of messages here anyway, but our time is up. I've been prompted. Let me just come to Mr. Sule for, your final words on this issue?
I think the final thing is to call on the citizens in a situation, insecurity situation like this, that we have a lot of arms involved, though there's little that civilians can do because we don't bear arms and we cannot begin all of a sudden to carry arms around. So the basic thing is to be more vigilant and report suspicious incidents to the police, even though there are difficulties whether we can trust them that when we report they will keep our identities away from the criminal guys. And there's a problem that sometimes we report and then when the police pick them we begin to celebrate like because we are heroes. Those kind of things, we have to discourage those kind of behaviors and then we have to also call on the police to intensify their public education, letting the people know that the times that we are, the time of crimes, the time of risks that are associated, and what should we do in order to also keep ourselves safe while they are finding ways to solve up the problem, and increase our voice through the media and the civil society to get the government, to get the MPs to give us effective assurance, believable one, that this kind of situation we are going to get out and this is the strategy that we are going to get out of it. And that assurance should be followed by action. It's not just words. We should see the action that is matching, then we can believe, yes, there's true, genuine concern at the top leadership level, respect to the heightened sense of insecurity in society. Otherwise, criminal elements will take opportunity and deepen the situation, worsen it, because once people have become feared, panic, and begin to act anyhow, and the criminals can also take advantage of that. And we don't want to worsen what is already on the ground. We don't want to get to a situation where it becomes apparent that the state is incapable, is unwilling, cannot protect its citizens, and the citizens have to protect themselves. We don't want to get to that particular point. So I think this is the few things I can say at this moment for all of us to particular vigilance and report. That's the only way we can also help our police from our own small way to get ourselves out of the difficulties.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Sule Ibrahim, for coming. I'm so grateful. Anytime we call you, make it a point to be on the show with us. We are so grateful, and we would always want to have you on this platform to discuss issues of this nature. Let me say a very big thank you to my cameraman, David. David, thank you so much for being in the studio at the back of the camera. Let me say a very big thank you to my producer and then my director, Adam Clenham. Adam, thank you so much for always being there. My soundman, TT, and all other persons who have contributed to the success of this program. Let me say a very good evening to Asamoah. You are with God's Glory Motors in, what do you call it, in Abosokai. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so grateful. I am so grateful to everyone who has watched tonight's program. But finally, in this country, no one is above anybody. We are all human beings and we are all citizens. We all pay tax. Some section of persons cannot be provided with security, whilst other people are left vulnerable. Whatever happens to them, nobody cares. If MPs are going to be given personal bodyguards and security, then the ordinary citizen would also have to be protected. Do we know the number of persons who have been killed in this country on the streets? Is it because those people are not members of parliament and so nobody cares about it? President has never made a statement, even when the journalist was actually murdered. There are several murder cases in this country. I've never heard president of the land made a statement on any of them. But when a politician was actually killed, murdered, statement was actually made. Ultimatums have been given. Instructions are given that IGP should apprehend the people, else he's going to lose his job. We are all human beings. We are all citizens. We must be cared for. Our interest should be placed at the topmost than for the interest of politicians to rather be placed. Who are you serving? You are serving with the good people of Ghana. If we are all killed today, who are you going to be serving in this country? If we are all murdered today, who would you politicians roll over? Let's think about this and make sure that if we are providing security and we are talking about issues concerning security in this country, then every citizen of this country deserves to be protected. And that is what we are calling for. If MPs are going to be given, or are going to be provided with security, bodyguards, then every citizen of this country equally deserves such security and all of that. And so we are calling on government to make sure that the issue is dealt with holistically than the knee-jerk approach that is being given to it. This all time will allow us for tonight. Make a time with us, same time tomorrow. My name is Justice Appiah, and the show has been Hot News. Goodbye.